Okay, this will be the first video on what I'm going to call mechanicals and systems, and might as well start with the engine room. Now the engine room, currently I'm in the hatch that's in the galley. And if you go into the main salon, there are 3 additional hatches, actually 4, but I'm not quite sure if it's functional. But we'll take this one because it's at one end, and we can take a look and see how everything goes. So let's go ahead and take a peek. Go down slowly so we don't kill ourselves. Alright. So, okay, here is the engine room. Now, as you can see, the first thing that I noticed right off the bat was the amount of lighting. It's unbelievably bright down here. A lot of fluorescent lighting. They're all DC. You can't beat it. It actually is very good. Second thing I noticed was that it's very clean down here. Even the bilge area is relatively clean. Another example here. So let me kind of walk you around counterclockwise. To the right, I'm trying to find a spot I can sit on here without crushing something. Sorry about that. That hatchway there is actually the port side fuel tank. Right here you can see the tube right in the center of the screen is the sight. There are no fuel gauges on this boat because, well, they don't really work that well anyways. But it does give you a sight. Now what you would do is you should open up the levers there and let you get the fluid in, and it will show you approximately how much you've got. Right now it looks like we're about half full, and the gauge is right about there. So there's also one on the other side which we'll come to. So that's how you kind of guesstimate how much fuel you've got. The big large white box here is our batteries. And these are house batteries, and I think these start batteries for the motor are also in there. So there's several of them, a lot of batteries on this boat. There's the kill switch for the batteries. As you can see, it's all hooked up. Everything's nice, clean marked. Right next to that is the fuel filters. Zoom in a little bit. Again, this is a diesel motor. The color is a nice cherry red, which it's supposed to be. As we take a good look, you can see through the sight glass there is no water separation, and at the very bottom there's no sediment. So these are actually working. Above in the white canisters are the 2 filters. Now you can run on one or the other of the 2 filters, or you can run on both. It is probably recommended that you run on one and then at some point in time flip over to the other. The reason why is if you do have some bad fuel, the one filter will actually take care of it for a while. If it starts bogging down, you flip over to the other filter, continue running, and you can change the filter while you're actually moving. So again, that is the fuel filter. Now right there is our autopilot. That's the hydraulic system for it, and that pretty much controls. You press your button, you set your degrees that you want to go, and just sit back and watch the world go by. So it's, again, nicely, easily access to it. The black tube, if you want to call it, or piping in front of us, is the exhaust for the main motor. Now this is actually, even though the engine is coolant cooled, you do have seawater or lake water, whatever, flowing through there because it does cool the exhaust before it actually enters into the lake or the ocean, wherever you are being. Now right in the back there, that red thing is the genset. Now I've got the cover off, and the cover is all this pink stuff. Now I'm not sure who actually created the cover or designed it, but the cover is either designed by someone who is very complex thinking or was totally drunk. There's screws that you have to take one off, then you have to go to the other side. It's really a pain in the ass. I'm going to totally redesign that when I put it back together. But anyways, it's a genset. The next video that I'm going to create is the genset. To my knowledge, at least to my diagnosis, is that the starter motor for the genset is no longer working. So you can stay tuned for video number 2 in this playlist, and you can see what I'm doing with that. Again, you can see we have well over here on this side, plenty of room for storage. And as we go around, we have, again, plenty of room for storage, and there are boxes back there full of parts, spare parts, which I have not had an opportunity to take a look at yet. Now, chances are, if they're filters and they're a couple of years old, I'm going to guess they're probably not good, particularly if they are not wrapped in a cellophane, because, you know, we got salt water in the air. It's just salt in the air and they rust out. Once they're rusted out, they're history. Right there is the flow, or excuse me, is the view for the diesel for the generator. Coming back, you can see we do have plenty of stainless steel supports for the seat. Right here is our what do you call it? Charger. Excuse me. It's a very good charger. Actually runs very well. It has a good digital readout and seems to be working very well. You can also see that we have AC power down here. I do have a fan going, trying to keep things cool. There is a fan for down here. Again, with diesel, you don't have to worry too much about spontaneous combustion when you start the engines, because the flash point of diesel is much lower, or is it higher? Whatever way. It's not as much of a concern as with gasoline. So you really don't need it, but there is one, and I think it's mostly used to maybe eliminate some of the vapors, because diesel can smell. The box right there is the hot water tank, and I believe it's 10 gallons if memory serves me right, which is bigger, which is actually very good. To replace it, all this stuff would be fairly simple. Well, not simple, but it can all be accessed through the salon flooring, so that won't be a problem. Again, this is the piping for the water system. We can go with the internal water system, or we can actually hook up a hose for city water. But again, there's a filter for the water system. So what we have here where the fan is on is the second battery pack. Again, it contains several 12-volt lead acid, could be maintenance free, or AMG batteries. Eventually I like to convert it all to the gel coat. Time will take care of that. What we have here, there's that blower motor, which is I've used it once. It's pretty noisy, so I haven't bothered with it. But I suppose if it got really hot down here, I'd probably use it just to cool things down. Again, here's the next panel for the starboard side. Diesel tank. Diesel tanks here, I believe we're pushing a combined about 700 gallons of diesel, which today is, with the prices, isn't going to be too bad. But I do want to get rid of the diesel that's currently on here, just so I can start with fresh diesel in the spring. Again, another sight glass. Again, you can see someone did actually mark it, so it was pretty nice of them to do that. What we have here is the transfer. Now, you have to run off of one of the other tanks, and in this case, as one tank starts emptying, you're going to get a tilt on the boat. In which case, then what you will do is flip all these levers, pump fuel from one tank to the other to level it off, and away you go. So that won't be a problem. Alrighty, what else we got? Next, this is just an intake for, and I'm not quite sure what this one is for. It's probably for some kind of a bilge pump of some sort. I'm not really sure, but it does have a strainer, so, and it looks a little funky. I better take a look at that and figure it out. Now, behind me here, let's see if we can move back a little bit, is another access way. Now, this access way is for all of the circuitry, for the AC, DC connections. You see now that you have to have everything locked. It doesn't have to be locked, but they have to have a lock on them so people realize, oh, there's probably something painful back there. Behind this is the fresh water tanks, and I believe we carry somewhere in the line of 400 to 500 gallons of fresh water. 2 tanks. Upstairs, as I'll show you someday down the road, are the meters for it. They're pretty accurate, and away we go. So, back over to probably the last thing I'll take a look at is the motor. Now, this is a Perkins 135. As you can see, it is not a common rail fuel injected, and frankly, I probably prefer that over something that might be fuel injected. I think this might be easier to work on if there's a problem. For example, if we do get some air in the system, all we need to do is just crack a couple of these, one here, one here, and one on the other end. Crank the engine a couple times until you get fluid. Takes care of the air problem. But it is a 135. You can see we've got a new oil filter there. We've got a gas or fuel filter up there. The fuel filter, I think in the big for the fuel are 30. Our size 30s. This one's I think is about 7s. So which is right here. It's a 7. But anyways, they did a lot of work on the motor before we left, which is good. They changed all the filters, but they added a couple things which I thought was a very good idea. And what we've got here is one shut off and another shut off. Now, in most boats, bigger boats, your hot water tank back there, even though you may be running, will continue to produce hot water or have hot water available. And what it does, it uses the fluid that comes, the hot fluid runs through the tank from the engine, runs through the tank, brings it back in and recirculates, and it just keeps your water nice and hot. The problem is, before they put in the shutoffs, if, let's just say, if a line did break, or something corroded, or something happened with the hot water tank, there wouldn't be, I wouldn't know it, and if I did know it, I couldn't do much about it. It could be hard to stop it. So if, let's say, something does happen with the water tank, something lets go, all I need to do now is shut the valves and it turns off the fluid to the hot water tank. I don't have to worry about draining the coolant. These are not fresh water. These are closed systems. They have a heavy-duty coolant system in both the engine and the starter. So that way we won't lose our fluid and overheat the engines. So anyways, this is probably a wrap-up for the engine room. Bunch of fuses down there. A lot of 300 amps. But anyway, so again, stay tuned. There'll be another video on fixing that monster, pulling the starter off of it. And keep an eye out for it. That's it. Thanks.